favourite guest and why? Oh my goodness, Moira, that's such a hard question. I don't really know. I don't think I have a favourite. There were certainly people I had on who I was very nervous before they came on. And that was because they were people that I really respected and listened to. For example, Kate Erickson, Natalie Ekdahl, John Lee Dumas. Really quite nervous about having them come on. And then, of course, this is the hilarious thing. Once you start talking to somebody, we're all just human beings and everybody's just, we all get up in the morning, we all go to bed at night. There's nobody who's better than anybody else. It was perfectly normal once we actually started talking. And interestingly, yesterday I recorded a podcast for somebody else's podcast who has a really big audience. And I was really nervous about going on her podcast. And once we started, it was perfectly fine. So do I have a favourite guest? I don't think I do. Now, that doesn't mean that I would say all of my guests have been of equal enjoyment. Does that make sense? There's nobody who I regret bringing on the podcast. That's for sure. I've turned down a lot of pitches to get on the podcast because, like I said, I prefer to choose who I want to speak to. A little tip for you, if you want to get on other people's podcast, don't get somebody else to message the podcast host and ask on your behalf. If you want to get on my podcast, you have got to connect with me somewhere on social media, strike up a conversation, and then you maybe suggest that you'd be interested, or even just to say you listen to the podcast. That's really, I'm not overcomplicated. If we are friends, we're chatting online, you say you listen to my podcast, it's likely that I'm going to say to you, oh, would you like to be a guest? I'm not that overcomplicated in how I pick people. I like people with interesting stories and people that I get on with, and I don't want to be pitched somebody by a pitching company. Okay, have you ever recorded an episode you didn't air? Yes, I did. And that was somebody who came on the podcast and didn't let me get a word in edgeways. And the whole thing left me feeling, and I probably completely chickened out of telling the person why I didn't air it. Of course, now I've got the amazing Catherine Gladwin on board as my new support crutch in my business. Catherine, if you're listening to this, you're going to get me really organized, and maybe then if you ask me that question in 6 months' time, I'll be like, yeah, I've got them all planned out for the whole 2020. Okay, what other questions do I have here? Louise Humphrey, who was on the podcast Studio 44 Pilates, has asked me, how did I become a Facebook person and how has it impacted my business? So what Louise is referring to there is me getting the She Means Business label. I am an accredited trainer under the She Means Business program for Facebook and Instagram in the UK. There was 23 of us then. I think there's more now. How did I get that? I think I talked about this on a previous episode, but basically I bang on all the time about getting out and meeting people in real life and going to events, and it's why I run events. And I've started running LinkedIn events here in Belfast. I've got my very first one tomorrow morning, a LinkedIn breakfast, and there's 14 people coming. I'm really excited about it, and I'm going to run those more regularly. And I've got the social media conference with Ashley coming up on the 17th of October. I started going to conferences about 2 years ago, and it's a huge game changer in business. But basically I started going to London for events, and one of my network, Jennifer Corcoran, who has also been in the podcast, told me I should join Enterprise Nation, which I did, and apply to be one of their top 50 small business advisors. Oh yes, how Jennifer found me was I was one of the top 100 small businesses in the UK in 2017 with the Small Business Saturday program. Small Business Saturday, who actually, completely going off on a tangent here, they've actually announced me as one of their 12 small business heroes for the UK this year. That's the first time I've mentioned that anywhere, so that's really exciting. Small Business Saturday are amazing support to small businesses. Small Business Saturday itself is on the first Saturday in December, and the idea is that you go out and you support your local small businesses and buy your Christmas gifts or your Christmas shopping from a small business as opposed to a big brand. So I applied to be one of the top 100 small businesses in the UK, and I got it. And I got to number 10 Downing Street for a reception. And at that reception, I met some people who were in Enterprise Nation, and I was encouraged to join Enterprise Nation, another really supportive organisation run by Emma Jones. It's like £10 a month. It's a complete no-brainer. They give out really cool training. They do lots of meetups and events. They're hugely supportive of business as well. So I joined Enterprise Nation, and I applied to be one of their top 50 business advisors in 2018, and I was awarded that. So I was one of the 5 in the IT sector. So they had a reception for that in London that I went to, and they were quite surprised that I'd flown over from Belfast for it. But at that event, I met Lorna Bladen, who then worked for Enterprise Nation. And my friend Jennifer said, Louise, you and Lorna need to talk about Facebook and Instagram, because Lorna heads up the She Means Business program for Facebook and Instagram for Enterprise Nation. So I pitched Lorna basically and said that I would love to be part of that. And because I was the only person from Northern Ireland who engaged with Enterprise Nation and engaged with Lorna, and they wanted more of a UK-wide reach with the programme, they invited me to become one of the She Means Business trainers, and they flew me to London to Facebook to meet the Facebook She Means Business team, and I had a full day's training. I've done that twice with Facebook, and that's how that came about. How it impacted my business, I think that I have a real thirst for learning and knowledge, and any training that I get, I absorb and then I share out with other people. Part of me thinks that I probably would have, ironically, when I started university, I did a degree in geography. People said, oh, you could be a geography teacher. And I said, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't like people shoehorning me into things. And I probably would have loved teaching, to be honest. My sister's a teacher and she loves it. But I teach social media and I really teach LinkedIn. And I was so comfortable teaching what I learned from Facebook and Instagram, running events around Northern Ireland, hosting meetups, She Means Business meetups, and I really, really enjoyed it and got a real buzz out of it. Did it help grow my business? Yeah, it probably did. Would I have been in the same place without it? Yeah, I think it would be. I get up, I go, I invest in myself, I attend conferences, I network with people, I follow up with relationships and networking, and that's how I've grown my business. Not necessarily having, Small Biz 100, Small Biz UK, Small Biz Hero. Those are amazing, amazing recognitions to have received. I'm so grateful for them. I would still be raising my profile through the podcast and the writing and everything else, regardless of those things. But yes, to me, I get involved with them because they're really interesting and they're worthwhile and I get to learn stuff. It's not really about having the award behind your name. That's why my LinkedIn profile doesn't say award-winning LinkedIn trainer. Yes, I've won awards for my training and I've won, quite big UK-wide awards, but that's not what I want to be known for. I want to be known for the results that I give people. So I don't know if that answers your question, Louise. I really went into a bit of a history lesson in the social bee career path there. So other questions that I received, let's see. What grew your listenership more? Ratings and reviews, guests sharing episodes, listeners sharing their favourites with colleagues, or was it something else? I actually am not sure what the answer to that is, because I meet people and they say, oh, I listened to your podcast, and I'm really surprised that they do. So I do have ratings and reviews on iTunes, and that's been brilliant. I'd love you to go on after this and leave me a rating or a review. That would be really amazing, because actually that apparently helps other people to find the podcast. I'd also love you to share it with somebody else. That would be really cool as well. I think that the guests tend to share it once. I don't have a set, you must share this across all your social media so many times. I don't have those rules for the podcast. If a guest comes on and shares it once with their audience, I really appreciate that. And I'm not pushing them to do more. Maybe I should, I don't know. So I've got my listenership has definitely grown. I'd love it to grow more. I had an email this week from somebody saying they could get me sponsorship for the podcast. And I scrolled down through the email, And it said one of their prerequisites was that you had 10,000 listeners on every episode. And I thought, well, I don't know where I've come up on your radar from, because that's not the case at the present time. It made me laugh. So I haven't even replied to the email. I think they're probably sending that email out to every podcaster that's registered on iTunes, possibly. So I'd love to grow. I'd love to grow the listenership. Absolutely. And probably asking people to share it would be a good idea as well. Hopefully that answers that question. What topic have you wanted to share but are too afraid to do it? I don't really think that there's any topic that I have wanted to share that I wouldn't. It's not really how my mind works. I don't dive into. I don't really, like, I maybe talk now and again about my family on here. I probably talk more about my dad than anything else, because he's, what inspired me to start the business after he passed away. I don't really see any topic that I would cover on the podcast that I would feel uncomfortable with, because it's about sharing help with people to use social media, and specifically going forward to use LinkedIn. I very much believe in the ethos of a rising tide lifts all boats, and I stay away from negativity. So it's just not my personality type. I would never do a podcast calling out other people and how they do things that I maybe disagree with. That's just not my nature. So, I'm a very optimistic person, and that's what you're going to get on this podcast. So you get reality too. You get reality bites. There's no faffing. I don't make stuff up, but I tend to keep things positive. Keeping your personal life out of business to an extent is really how I run things. But I'm generally a happy person anyway. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into the LinkedIn episodes, I have to say. And I have already asked somebody who I see on LinkedIn doing a brilliant job to come on the podcast. I have a couple of amazing ladies who I have worked with online, who are in America, who I'd like to come on the podcast. Summer, you're one of them. Summer and a lady called Karen Nelson. I'd like to bring them on the podcast to talk to them about their businesses, and they're also hugely supportive of my business. Rising tide lifts all boats. So going forward, I want to plan more. I want to batch more. I want the podcast to be really something that you get value out of and it helps you in your business. So that is the goal for me going forward. And I'd love to hear from you. What have you enjoyed about the last 100 episodes? Did you listen to them all? So I rely on you, my dear listener, to let me know suggestions you have, feedback you have. Leave me a review, share the podcast with one other person. I would love to know what you think the tagline should be, like level up your LinkedIn. I don't know, I like alliteration, so I do. Carol Cox was one of my favourite guests as well, thinking of the word alliteration. Carol Cox was Speaking Your Brand. I forgot to mention her. She was a brilliant guest. Carol and I just get on really well, I think. And we'll meet one day in person, maybe this year, who knows? So yeah, forgot to mention Carol. Just wanted to throw that in at the end. So yeah, get in touch with me and let me know what you think of the podcast. Maybe I'll even see you at a live event, whether it's in Belfast or elsewhere in the world. That would be super. And thank you so much for joining me on the Social Bee podcast. I really appreciate every single listener. And I love hearing from people. I used to get emails a bit more frequently. I don't get so many anymore, but I used to get emails at the start from people saying that they listened in, and it gave me such a buzz to hear that people actually were enjoying the podcast. So if that's you, let me know. And looking forward to working with you on LinkedIn, on the podcast, and talking to people about LinkedIn. And I'll speak to you next week. Thanks, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Social Bee podcast. Come and join us over at www.socialbeeni.com and let's start creating a buzz about your business. And if you like what you hear, please pop over to iTunes and leave me a review. I'd really appreciate it. See you next time.